Hello! Welcome to Bad at Board Games.
Well, he's Bad at Board Games.
I'm Brad Lake.
And I'm Toph Ferguson.
We're Bad at Board Games, so you don't have to be like Toph.
That's exactly what you do not want to be like Toph.
Or play like me. There you go.
I don't know. I feel like I am becoming more your quality of playing than I used to be.
There we go.
And you're becoming a lot better of a player. So
I don't know. There's always
Maybe
questions
not.
about that too.
Yes. How many times have you won this game?
0.
So, anyways.
What are we talking about today?
Yes, today we are talking about the 2020 game by one of at least my favorite designers, probably Brad's as well, Vital Lacerda, and that is On Mars.
It's a banger.
That's an understatement.
Stick around, find out what our BGG rating is, what the value rating is, our pros, our cons, best player count, all the things you might want to know about this game to see if it's right for you.
Yes. Way to set that up.
What are we talking about? Designer,
yes.
publisher?
Yes. So this game was designed by Vital Lacerda, and the artwork in many of Vital Lacerda's big box games is by Ian O'Toole, who I have grown to very much appreciate when it comes to artwork in a game. It's just beautiful, but it also flows very well.
Functional and decent icons and such.
Yes, lots of icons, but they are very nice. They're legible. Yeah. So I greatly appreciate Ian O'Toole. Thanks for being a good graphic designer. Yeah. And Lacerda, oh my goodness. Yeah, fantastic. So game came out. It's been out for a little while. Came out in 2020, and this is now 2024. So it's been out for a while, but we finally were able to sit down and play the game. I bought it quite a while ago and just hadn't had a chance to actually learn it. So finally said, you know what? We're doing it. So here we are.
Awesome. So the theme is Mars. Not that you would know that from the title of the box. So you actually are flying from a space station back down to Mars, terraforming it, building colony, however you want to look at it, and then upgrading your tech trees to then make it better so that you can build more things faster, rockets going back and forth, all those kind of things. So unlike other Euros, I would say the theme does kind of work with what you're doing. Now, compared to Kanban, I think the theme and the mechanics all work really well together. So this isn't as integrated of a theme. But it's not pasted on either. You know, you're like, okay, I have to take this trip. The shuttle's going back up to the space station so that I can go get resources. Oh, I missed the shuttle. I can't go back down to Mars and do the worker placement actions down there. You know, so there is some method to the madness, but I would say as far as steeped in theme mechanics, it's good, but not as good as Kanban.
I disagree. I don't know. I say I disagree, but I think that
Kanban literally is working your way through building a plant and going to each department and doing all that. Like all that stuff works. This could be anything.
I don't agree with anything. It's not a pasted on theme at all. But
I didn't say pasted on. I said not as good as Kanban.
Yeah, I'll give it to you, but fraction of a point below.
2 points.
Oh my goodness, we disagree on something.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Good.
Doesn't take away from the game. I'm just saying, like the theme. You know.
He's spot on that. I will say that.
That's all I'm saying.
It's not distracting.
It's just a theme.
It is a theme.
Mm-hmm.
I used a very fantastic word. Terraforming Mars. Such a great game.
Horrible game.
Such a fantastic game. Apparently, I like space themes. I did not realize that, but apparently, I like space themes.
Evidently. So what do we got on the mechanics?
Yes. So I won't go over all of mechanics, but the big things, and Brad's already mentioned one of the biggest to begin, and that's worker placement. And I know it's probably controversial to say it's worker placement because not everything is going to require a worker, and nothing is really going to block anybody for the most part. So it's not your typical worker placement, but that is a big part of it. You do have your meeples, and you are going to at some point move them to be able to take actions, at least some of them. That's the big one. Tech tree is the other one. You mentioned that as well. So this is a fantastic engine builder, I think. It's a very subtle, very tight engine builder, but I love that nuance of trying to get at least one thing to work for you and hoping that you can do a few things very well. Not one thing great, but a few things very well. Tech tree itself, we do have technology, and that does limit you through the game. So, like, those little things I really appreciate about kind of how they've included a tech tree and worker placement into it. There's also contracts that you can end up going out and buying, helping you at endgame. I don't think either of us are good at that, but that exists. The other thing I really like is the way that the player order begins. It is not going around the table, but it's actually variable turn starts based on kind of where you're putting your place in kind of the line for benefits or starting first. So those are the biggest ones. Little things you'll notice: tile placement, set collection, resources, spending resources, kind of managing those.
Building.
Yeah.
You have buildings that you can place out in the
Yeah.
compounds and grouping them together.
And moving. So you will have your rover and your bots, and the opponents will have that. So you will have to at some point move around the board as well. So hex movement is a thing. Upgrades, engine building, I think, is the big thing for me. That's the biggest one because you really are doing that in many different ways.
Yeah.
Some collectively.
Yeah, but I would. It's kind of. I would say it's not going to feel like a worker placement game. It's not going to feel like an engine building game. It's not going to feel like a tech tree game, but it has all those things in it.
Yeah.
Like, and you're trying to work and figure out how those things can work together versus just like, I can't get anything to work.
That's, yes. So let's just say this is a very tactile play game. This is not something you can very easily just pick a route and go for it. It's a game you have to pivot quickly to do certain things. So there's a lot of deep planning and then a lot of changing plans.
Yep.
That's not style play, but what do we call it? Mechanic, but that's definitely a big part of it. So what about player count, Brad?
So player count, this plays 1 to 4 players. We played it at 4 in our last game, and it took 4 hours with the teach. So it does end up being about 45 minutes per player after you've gotten it taught. Even in our subsequent games, it didn't go any faster. Like, I would almost say it's going to be close to a 3-hour game, regardless of if you're playing with 3, 4, or even 2. Like, we played at 2, and it still took, like, I think it's 45, unless you're playing at 1 or 2, and then it's still like 2 or 3 hours. So it doesn't quite flex with the player count. Because once, I think more players actually like start completing contracts and moving the end game. Yeah. And when you only have 2 people, you don't complete those contracts as fast. So the game takes about the same amount of time, if that makes sense.
I didn't think about that actually, because I've also played it 1 player, and most of my plays of 1 player was before I played it with multiple people. I was learning the game, and then I realized it's a solo game, and I was like, heck yeah. 1 player took a long time, but it definitely is a lot quicker than 2.
Right.
I think the 2 player, I think you were spot on. When you play 4 player, and possibly 3, we haven't played 3. When you play 4 player, everybody's doing things quicker. So that does mellow out the time of play. That's, I don't know.
I would say, and Toph will have to talk about the solo, it's great at any player count. Like, I didn't feel like 2 was better than 4. I can't imagine 4 being any different really than 3. I didn't feel like the game went 5 hours at 4, so that was fine. It didn't go any quicker really at 2. It probably could have gone a little quicker. We were talking, but we didn't talk for an extra hour, right? So I think this game, at least in my plays of 2 and not missing 3 in our 4-player games, there's not a bad player count. Now, how did you like the solo?
Yeah, I like the solo a lot, but the solo was very different in feel from playing it with other people. But for a solo play, my play was exactly the same as if I was playing multiple players. It's just there were more things that were kind of going on by the cards that were being drawn for the AI. For Lacerda, my opponent. But I really did enjoy it, and it's one that sometimes those solo games are just so wild and different. With this one, I felt, okay, this is me playing the game. The AI wasn't another player. It was more designed to block and to move the game forward and kind of get you closer to the end game. So certain things were a little bit easier than all of a sudden when I'm playing with multiple players. It was like, oh, I got to get that contract now. I can't wait, or things like that, because AI wasn't really doing some of those changes. But my play played exactly the same, and it was extremely enjoyable at one. I like it better at multiple players, but I mean, 2 was fine, 4 was fine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So can you take us through a summary bullet point of a turn?
Yes. So on every round, there's going to be 2 things that every player gets to do. You have to take a main action, and then you can choose to take an executive action. So you have two options, 2 things to do on your turn, 1 mandatory. When you are actually on Mars, there are 5 main actions that you can choose from. When you are out in space, there are also 5 main actions that you can choose. So on Mars itself, when you are on the colony, you can build a building, and so you can actually develop on Mars either your own shelters or some of the other building types. You can also upgrade your buildings. So if you have a blueprint, then you can choose to upgrade that building into an advanced building, which is going to get you more points. You can also choose to go hire a scientist or to get some contracts. This is something I haven't figured out how best time-wise to be able to play it so that it works well, but the scientists really are long-term engine building for you. So that's a fun little place.
And it's a race to get them. There's only 1 of each resource color.
Yeah, so there's a total of 6 scientists, because there's also 1 for your home base ish, and then the 5 other building types. So yeah, there's only 6, whether you play solo or 4 players. So it is kind of a race, but you also have to know what you're going for. So that's the scientist. The contracts will come out as scientists are hired, so you can have end game scoring that you could also hire from that spot. You can also move, so you will have your rover on the game, and then you'll also have a robot on the game. When you begin, you can get more robots, and you could choose to move them around the board. They are useful for collecting things or for building things. Robots build, rovers collect. So that's a good little spot. And then the last one is the rocket ship, and that is when you can welcome ships to Mars. So in essence, people are coming from Earth, and you can put them to work for you.
Basically, you unlock them from your Tableau.
Yeah.
But there's a restriction to that. You have to be at the certain level of a colony before you can. It limits how many rockets you can have.
Yeah. So as you are building your buildings, the colony can increase. The colony is going to have a goal. And so if you build one of 4 different types of buildings, then all of a sudden the colony level is going to increase, and you can welcome home an additional ship at that point. So yeah, that's another restrictive thing to learn how to play well, balancing all of that. But the ships are helpful in many different ways. Over here, when you're up in space, there are really only 4 actions to take, but there is a 5th spot. So we'll start with it. It is when you have nothing else to do and you just need to get back to the colony, you put your piece there. So it's kind of a waste of turn, but you get to immediately travel at the end of that round. You can also purchase blueprints, which are cards that allow you to have additional executive actions, which we'll get to in a second. You can buy technology so that you can start to build up your tech tree. You can increase or improve your technology up the tech tree so that it gets more powerful and you unlock more things. And then the last one down there is you can get resources. So if you just need to get something, that's where you can end up going to the warehouse to be able to get what is available. So those are the 10 actions you can take. There's also the executive actions. They're optional. You got to pay for them. And there are 3 you'll begin with, and then you'll collect more as you go when you unlock your rocket ships or when you buy your blueprints and upgrade those buildings. So
the executive actions require, what are the gems called?
Typically, we're going to call them diamonds.
Yeah.
There's a Newtonium, I think is what they call it in the rule book. Some call it other things, but I call them diamonds.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on. And then at the end of the round, if the shuttle is on the number 1 spot or the red shuttle space, then if it's going to Mars, you can choose to go with the shuttle to Mars, or you end up being stuck. So one of the other main action that you have to choose is bouncing back and forth from space to Mars, because as people unlock and more things happen, it takes 2 turns to go back and forth. Then it takes 3 turns to go back and forth. So you don't want to get stuck for like 5 turns up, on one side versus the other. So the timing going back and forth, I think that, and then the track where the colony kind of has to build up together and level up together. Those are the 2 things that are really start to, make the game rough.
Yeah.
So
that is probably the biggest mechanic. I guess I didn't really mention that in the mechanics, is how this whole part of the board works, which is where the ship is, because you identified before I did the downfall of getting stuck.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the game, I guess we could call it a little bit we don't normally do this, but some things to be aware of in this game that you would want to do when you first play it, especially if you're playing with multiple people. When you have buildings out on the map, you are going to be placed near one of those buildings, and everybody, at least for the first round or so, as you try to develop, was it an advanced? What moves that up? Life support system, anytime you build any of the LSS building types, which is the battery generator, the water plant, the greenhouse, and then the oxygen. So if you're able to build an LS, one of these, it moves up the colony track, and then there's 4 of those, and then once all 4 of those get to level 2, then you move up to the next level, and it unlocks spaceships and other things and starts to trigger the end of game. I would almost recommend to play cooperatively on that first round, where everybody builds the LSS building that they're close to, and then let this chaos start to begin, because if you don't, it really can bog things down. If you're thinking like, like our first game, everybody's kind of like, I'm going to go over here and do that. And it's better to not move and build in that first round and build the one that's close to you, and start to look at how the game's progressing as your first game, and then also bounce back and forth to get the timing of it and understand what you're doing back and forth in your first game. Don't just like, I'm going to stay in Mars or I'm going to stay in space. Like, first couple games, you're going to want to just bounce back and forth each turn to do stuff, and then you're just going to kind of unlock, and you're going to kind of see, and then when it goes to, it takes 2 turns, you can be like, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm going to spend 2 turns on Mars, not 2 turns in space, or I'm going to spend 2 turns in space, get my resources, then go back to Mars. Like, understand that. That would definitely be the watch out in your first play kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, in your first play, I love the idea of learning a game and playing it cooperatively. Or open. I guess open would be the other word. This is how we learned, and I want to learn more hard games like this in the future. Yeah, I would say do not worry the first couple games you play about what score anybody has, but just try things and talk to each other about, is that the best move? Do you want to try this instead? Oh, have you thought about doing this? So that you're all, whoever's playing it is learning the game together, because the actual mechanics are super simple. But seeing them all is like, somebody may see something like, well, you should probably go for a scientist this turn because this, and you didn't see it. Like, this is a game and a teach that if it's complicated, everybody should be working together. Everybody has different skill sets in your Euro games, and the first time you play it, just work collectively. You're going to have different points, and you're going to see who wins, but like, don't be like, I hope he doesn't see that, because then I'll make sure I win. Like, no, show him or her those moves. They'll pick what they want, but then at least they now see them, and they can understand, I didn't realize I could have done that. If I'd have known that, I would have, like, because there's so much you're trying to take in. You may see something and be watching something that somebody else isn't watching, and you could help, like, openly work, not cooperatively play, to learn the strategies and learn how to do things. It will really help you enjoy this game a lot more. It very much does. And it's like, there's so many things to do. There's 10 actions, but there's so many things to do because it's so deeply rooted in strategy and this tactical play of how do you do this, how do you do that, that really when you can work together, like the contracts, they're long term, but if you see it right away, be like, hey, look, that's there, you're almost to it, go for it. Okay, so if they get it, it's 12, 15 points, something like that, but it's not, don't play for the points. And then blueprints are the other thing, I think. You know, if somebody is able to see what the blueprints are and see how they can work together, go ahead and call that out, because that's a part of strategy that maybe we're not thinking of, because there's 50 other deep parts of strategy that you're maybe better focusing on instead. And so you can kind of help each other learn how to play based on how you play, and they may not, so that they can start to see all the different connection points between the deeply rooted strategy.
So we're just basically telling you that because I think like this game deserves, like, why is it so good? But at the same time, why do people not like it? I would say those two reasons are the reasons people don't like it. They're not working together enough to move the colony up together, which there's no reason for somebody just to go up one track on that, because you don't get any more experience points. Like, everything kind of needs to work together, and you don't want to play this cutthroat. There are some race
begin
parts,
with, at least.
well, but there's some things you're going to race for, and that's cutthroat. But you still need to realize, like, you want the game to end. You don't want the game to take 5 hours, right? And so, like, working and moving things around, up the tracks. So, but we could talk forever on this. I guess we probably should get to our pros and cons.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of pros and cons-ish a little bit with it, but yeah, I love that advice. And that's how you and I play games, I think, a lot of times anyways, is just...
Well, I would say no. This is new. We have not cooperatively played games before.
We've not played it,
teach each other a game before. Like, that's typically, we're sitting there in our own isolation. I would say that's how most people play. But at the same time, I can say, like, when somebody has a bad experience, that's why.
Yeah.
Help them, give them your knowledge of playing these Euro games, get them to understand the connections, show them what they could do, let them choose what they want.
Yeah.
And then, at the same time, like, that might be a bad choice if you have the experience. If you don't, you're all learning together, and there aren't any bad choices. But yeah, I can't even express how much more fun a game is when you do that.
Yeah.
And then 3 or 4 or 5 games into it, you just play, right? But,
yeah. And it helps everybody to learn it better, because something like this is going to take many plays to learn. But yeah, no, fantastic advice, Brad.
Yeah. All right. Pros.
Yes. Okay. There's a lot of them, a whole lot of them. You've heard me probably already say this, but I love how nuanced and tight the engine building of this game is. It is difficult, but at the same time, it's easy. Like, it's like this weird mix of, I'm doing these very easy things, but in order to get good, it's going to take a very long time. And I love that, because that's a long-term challenge and struggle for me. It keeps me thinking and going and wanting to try new things. Sometimes I can get stuck in, I know what to do because this is what I do well. And with this one, it forces you to try different things. So that's one of the things I love. It can either crumble or at the same time be absolutely fantastic. And navigating that, managing that, for me, is great. Yeah. So yeah, engine.
My pro to this is I really enjoyed the space side or the Mars side. And then if you mess up, you're stuck, right? Like, you have, regardless of what you want to do, you got to realize that, like, I may want to do another Mars turn, but if I don't go to space, I'm stuck on Mars. I've already been on Mars for 2 turns. I don't want to be stuck on Mars for 2 more because I have no resources. I've got nothing else. I got to forgo this, and I got to get to space for 2 turns and then come back and do that. Like, once you realize, like, I like that mechanic. I like the double-sided work. There's worker placement-ish in space. There's worker placement-ish in Mars, and you may forgo one so that you don't get stuck for 2, like, even 5 turns. Like, towards the end of the game, when it only moves every 3 turns, it's a bad thing. Like, you got stuck in space at the end of our game.
Yeah, and it is like 9 turns, because it's the 3 turns you were there, and then the 3 turns it's got to be on Mars, and then it's got to come back and do 3 turns before you can go back to Mars.
And there's ways to get out of it, but they're like, lose a turn to get out of it. Or, you can spend a rocket ship if it's available, but then that rocket ship is...
It's used, and so you're losing 6 points to do that.
So, like,
or 3 points.
So there are workarounds, but at the same time, it's like, do you want to use that workaround or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
But more pros.
Gosh, that was going to be my next one, was absolutely loving this rocket ship and the way that it moved. Gosh, I think navigating the tech tree, this is definitely part of the engine building and the nuance of it, but navigating the tech tree
On your Tableau.
on your Tableau, yeah. As you develop this technology, you're going to place it down on a spot, and some of those spots have resources or bonuses that you can get, but it's not just about the bonuses on the board. Like, those are nice. What's really helpful is as you use your technology, it improves. Well, I should say, as someone else uses your technology, it improves. And you can actually go physically try to improve it, but...
And we didn't talk about that. But so what is interesting about this game is you can tech tree up your technology, but then somebody else can do something because you've unlocked that technology for the colony.
Yeah.
But then, and this is the wrong size chit, but when they use your technology, you're going to get, an air, was this air?
Oxygen
chit. And then that's going to allow you to move your technology up again. So you actually want people to borrow the technology that you've developed, because then it's going to allow you to move the technology up further. So it's like this, that's great, because nobody can do that action until one person in the group has unlocked that technology.
And then it gets so much more powerful to the point that these technologies can be huge for anybody to be able to use. And
because other people get the bonus as well, right? Like if you're on level 3, everybody gets the level 3 technology.
What do you mean? Like if your tech goes up here?
Yeah, you get +3 to whatever the movement is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like, it's not just the person who tech trees it. Like I can move my robot 1 when it's on level 1. When it's on level 4, I can move it 4.
Yeah.
When Toph borrows my level 4 robot, he can still move that robot 4.
Yeah.
Right. Like but now that he's used it, I get to move to level 5.
Yes. Yeah. That's I think awesome. Like that's a fun part of the tech tree. Sometimes tech trees are just like move it up yourself to affect you, or move it up yourself just to get to a certain level just because. In this one, I think there's a lot more enjoyment and outcome, like result of
it's
your
hard to
text.
realize that, like, and it's something you don't usually, I get to use their thing. Usually it's once they grab it, it's theirs, and now they're the only ones that benefit from it. So it's cool that and you almost forget that you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, almost everything in this game is public knowledge. You do have private goals that you can work towards, but outside of that, everything else is public knowledge. So when you hire scientists, it's there. When you get new blueprints, they're open. Everybody can see them. And once it's upgraded, only you can use it unless somebody else has a scientist of that same color and they move it onto your spot. Then they can use it.
Yeah.
But
then they lose the scientist.
Well, they could move it again.
Oh, that's right. It does. They can still take it off your card.
Yeah. But you, as a person, if you put your scientist on my card, you would get to use it for free. So would I, because scientists allow you to do it for free. So yeah. So there's a little bit of a benefit/risk when you do that. But yeah, everything is public knowledge, and so that's another thing that is a positive, I think, with this game, because it's who cares? It's so difficult. Yeah, know what everybody else is able to do. It's not going to help any.
Another positive I have with this, and Toph alluded to it when he said it's worker placement, but kind of not. All of the actions where you would normally put a worker, some of them don't require a worker. So it's going to be wrong, but I'll say 50% of the action spaces require a worker, 50% of them don't. So
100% right.
Like that's kind of nice. I mean, like if I've run out of workers, then I can still take one of these other actions and don't feel like I'm taking a skip turn. Your workers can allow you to do things, but then your workers, you can use them to boost an ability. So you place a worker to go somewhere, and then I'm going to use my other 2 workers to actually boost that ability to get it ×3, right? So you have this push and pull of that. Do I spend it now? Oh, I'm going to go back down to Mars, and they're going to be stuck up in space. And when I go back to Mars, I get to pull all my workers that I had on that side of the board back and put it on my Tableau. Do I have enough? Like, you're looking at this worker efficiency puzzle, because you don't get your workers back until you come back to space. Not when you leave space. Oh, we're leaving. Everybody get on the boat. They're like, nope, we'll wait for you to come back.
They got to stay working for you.
So yeah. So it's another one of those with the spaceship thing going back and forth. But I like the fact that half the places you don't need workers and you can still take the action. I like that the worker, you're planning on going back and forth so that you can gather your workers back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think another benefit I like with that movement back and forth is the getting resources or getting bonuses, getting something. It always feels like in this game, for some reason, you're getting things, and that makes you feel good as a gamer. Also helps you, and you need the resources. But like when you go out to space, you're going to collect your people, just like Brad said, from space and move your people back. But you're also going to be able to gain resources if you have a bit of an engine inside of Mars itself to produce resources. So there's a benefit there. And when you come back, you're going to be able to put out some development tiles on the board or discovery tiles on the board where you could actually then take your rover to go and find it. So you're putting more on the board that's giving you more things to do or to look for or benefits and things to gain. I like that. It feels good.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know how long we could probably continue going on for a lot of pros, but
one thing that we did not discuss, but I do like these. So there's also goal cards, collective goal cards on the board itself, and they will give you pretty much resources. Most of them are diamonds or the crystals. If you do a certain action, they're hard to remember to get the benefit. Maybe that's going to be one of my cons, but I do like that these 3 goals is what will end the game. So you have to work on them.
And there's 2, so you have 2 ways to end the game, right? The goals here and that.
Well,
I guess that's not true. That as you move up the colony, it reduces the number of these that you have to complete.
Yes.
So
speeds up the end of the game if you're
nothing
taking
speeds
too
up
long.
this game. Just realize nothing speeds up this game.
But it does push the end. It does push the end.
It does help the end. Like I think that's why it's going to sit in that 2 to 3 hour range no matter how many players you have, because it all works synergistically together.
Yes.
You know, if you're pushing that up, you're not going for goals. The time elapsed is still the same. When you finally finish the 1 goal, the game ends. Or if you're not pushing up the colony and you complete all 3 goals,
the game
you
ends.
still spent the same amount of time.
Yeah. Great observation.
Yep.
Yeah. So those are benefits or pros. Anything else that you have pro-wise
well,
that you want to discuss?
If I were going to summarize things, there's just so much to do. You can move a rover and go collect things. You can move a robot. The robot kills the things that you go collect, but you need the robot in a certain place to build a building or do something else. And it has to be like 1 away or 2 away or blah, 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 blah. Like I can't remember when you're trying to put multiple...
Yeah, so you can build
complexes that are the same together. There's a certain rule for that.
Yeah.
Which is, I forget now.
Yeah, so depending on how many of your individual
habitats,
shelters on the planet you have, that's going to increase the amount of wait, I'm wrong with that one.
No.
That's another thing. There's a lot of things.
Yeah,
that's how many things you can store in your storehouse on your board.
Right.
In order to build a complex, you have to have the technology on the board developed to be able to build that.
That's what it was. And then when you build a complex, then that's what lets you put a cube out. Like there's
another score.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and I guess I enjoy that. But then we're gonna jump right into cons, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you do your first con.
I don't have any. No, I'm lying. It is. Oh gosh, I mean, I do have a handful. Nothing is a con that says I don't want to play the game again, but it is tight. And that for me is a fantastic thing. I love games that are tight. This is tight. Maybe almost too tight.
So I think Gaia Project is the tightest game I've played. I don't think this is even as tight as that. Gaia Project just feels like I can't get anything. Right? I feel like it's hard to do things in this, which is a tightness, but like at the same time, you feel like you can do something.
Yeah.
Like
I'll give you that 100%.
So I hear what you're saying, and he's not wrong. But at the same time, anytime I'm comparing things for tight, I think a Gaia Project where I'm like, I don't have any gold, I don't have any resources. Oh, I don't have enough of this.
Yeah.
Pass.
So yeah. Okay, so it is not that tight like that.
Yeah.
For me, what I'm thinking in my mind when I say tight, has more to do with the fact that to do any one thing and complete it, it's going to take you many turns. But that's also sacrificing the other things that you need to do. So it is a game of thinking long term, being able to make tactical play, but also realize that you do have these few things that you're working towards, because you can't just do one, but you can't go all out in one, because then you're ignoring everything else. It's such a, in order to play well, you have to be able to take many turns to do anything well. I guess that's kind of where I'm thinking.
And it is, and you have to, when somebody beats you to the thing that you needed, that can be crippling in this game.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a con, but at the same time, you have to realize that this game is tactical in a way that you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to pivot now that that's taken away from me? If they get the scientist you were going for, that can significantly hurt, because you got blueprints to go with that scientist specifically, and now you don't have the money. The scientist basically allows you to do the extra action for free. And so otherwise you have to spend diamonds. And now you were planning on that free action, and now you can't. You're going to have to spend diamonds on it, and you don't have a diamond engine, right? Like, it's a bit of a race. It doesn't feel take that, but if somebody takes it before you were able to,
you feel like you
right.
have to start
and
over.
So it's like you're going to have to kind of prioritize what's more important. I would say getting a scientist for you to then is probably getting the scientist before you get a bunch of blueprints is probably more important, because it helps then you figure out what blueprints you want.
Yeah.
Versus the other way around, like, because if somebody gets the scientist and you got blueprints for that scientist and you weren't able to, now you're like, ah.
Or if you decide to go the route of getting a scientist and then you have no good way to go get a bunch of
the plans.
Blueprints, then you're like, well, my scientist is going to do nothing for me, because he only scores with the blueprints that you have upgraded, and you have to be able to upgrade the buildings.
But however, in this game, you can place your scientist on somebody else's blueprint, which is, hard to get your head around.
Yeah.
Like, I can use other people's stuff, like whatever, because no other game does this.
Not like that.
Yeah. No other competitive game allows you to use the other people's stuff. Now they're going to get a bonus for it, but it's better than sitting there with somebody that gets you nothing, right?
Yeah.
But there's I don't know where I was going with it, but there's some pros and cons in and around those statements.
And yeah, and that for me, like, to say that's a con, honestly, that's one of the things I love about the game.
Yeah,
you
being able to use somebody else's thing, but I guess like prior to that, there was the con.
Yeah.
In it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's wild.
All over the place.
All over.
We're all over the place, because this game is all over the place.
And it's hard to say what the cons are, in general. I do have one other one. Well, go ahead.
No,
you do yours.
I think I just did one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the whole idea of gaining points through the progress of your colony by putting out your pieces. So in the game, when you build a building, if you want to build a complex, so you want to build onto it. So if I were to build another battery next to this battery, you have to have the battery tech. Once you have the tech, you can do so. And once you build or make larger
from like a 2 to a 3 from a 3 to a 4, where the batteries are all chained together and touching.
Yeah, then you can put out your cube for that specific resource, and then you can start to gain points. But the points in this game, it can be such a high value, high point game that you're going to be gaining like 1, 2, 4, 7 total points. It's not much. It's almost like that's too much. Like that didn't need to be added into the game, because it's such a subtle thing that I don't think is a way to really win the game or sway the game.
That's not going to win you. Well, but then you have the points at the bottom.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, is the points at the bottom.
Well, it was 11.
Okay, but that's if you build or upgrade 5 complexes, 5 different types. Okay, but that's Ashby. Let's just set that aside. There's Ashby, and then there's us, the normal people. Yeah, the normal people. Yeah, I mean, I guess he did. But at the same time, he's not earning that 11 points. One scientist is going to give you, hopefully, more than that.
Yeah, so the con, and this is what people talk about, and this is the reason I didn't buy the game, earlier, and I was glad he bought it, but I didn't want to buy it because I kept hearing like everybody's like, well, if you don't work together, if you don't work cooperatively, I understand that. However, at the same time, you don't have to work cooperatively to play this game. You need to understand that you have to build your colony up. So there's no points for somebody completely building up and going up the water track, and that's all they do. They sit there and go up the water track. There's no points for like, hey, I get 2 victory points this time. Now water's at level 2. I'm going to get 4. I'm going to push water up again. I'm going to get 6. He has taken all those incentives out where normally you rush up the track, right? Everything needs to move up together. So somebody needs to build a water. Somebody needs to build a battery. Somebody needs to build a plant, and somebody needs to build an oxygen, or 2 people build 2 of the, like, then you're going to get 2 victory points and you're going to be able to place something out. It's kind of like this rotating game. He wants the people playing the game to build one of these complexes, move that up, take your cube off your board, get 2 points, and get 2 points for moving something up. Then it almost like rotating. Now you need to build the next one, and everybody needs to rotate and build the next one over, because then everybody's unlocking their tableau and getting the points, but at the same time everybody's moving their colony up. If somebody just doesn't and says, you guys have to deal it, then the game's going to really turn into who's going to get these done. Yeah. And you're limited by the number of rockets you have. If you don't move the colony up, it tightens the game up, but it doesn't necessarily mean the game can't end. You just have to realize that everybody has to focus on these objective cards to end the game versus the track. Mm-hmm. And I would see where that could kind of suck. Yeah. Right? So you don't have to play cooperatively, but everybody needs to understand that mechanic, and I think that's why the first time you play the game, you need to work. You need to talk together and talk openly about what you're thinking about doing. What's the best thing I can do now? That first 2 games playing like that will then help you overall.
Yeah. I agree. I put off buying this because Brad had said, there's this whole cooperative side, and if you don't do this together, like the way it was almost out in my mind, it was like, oh, that's terrible. And so finally I broke down. I put off buying it for a while, and finally I bought it, but then it sat on my shelf for a long time because of that kind of nervousness of, oh, I don't know, Brad's not going to like it. Am I going to like it? And then as soon as I started learning it, I was like, wait, there's nothing to be worried about with this. As long as Brad said, as long as you are working to increase the colony, because if you don't improve the colony, you're not going to be able to do certain things. Like, you are really going to be limited with an amount of workers that you can have, and you need workers. You're going to be like, there's limitations that are put into it. So, it's something that you all have to focus on, and you have to focus on it. But I don't know. I don't feel as strongly about it as you do, but I understand 100% what you mean. Yes, that's a good way to think about it.
It's a side game that you can't ignore, and everybody needs to contribute to the side game.
Yeah. If you're not contributing to it, you're not going to probably win this game, because you can get great rewards and benefits.
It will unlock things that you can do if you're contributing to that. If you don't contribute that, it tightens the game up.
Yeah. Yeah. And you miss out on the opportunity points for the end game scoring too.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Any other negatives for you?
It's gigantic and it's hard to learn.
Yes and yes. I think this is the largest tablescape of all games that we own.
Yeah. I don't know if one bigger.
Well, Kingdom Death.
Well, yeah. I have a 4 foot by 8 foot table over there.
But you almost need that for this game too. Like we can't get it all on this little table here. Like there are things that are stacked on top of each other you can't see.
The same size table as Kingdom Death.
Yeah.
It's close.
Yeah. It's huge. And it does take a long time to learn. So if you are reading the rules, like I read the rules, then I watched some videos of multiple people teaching it. Then I went back and I read the rules again and did the solo. And I hate teaching it. Okay, maybe that's another con. This game sucks to teach. It's just too much, and it's so abstract. And it's abstract in how you do things. What you do is super simple, but as soon as I started explaining it, I was like, oh, it's super simple. I know what I'm going to do, and I practiced it. And it took me, what'd I say? It was 2 hours?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
An hour. Maybe it was just an hour. But I think it was like after an hour, I realized I can't teach this game. Like I can't spend an hour plus on just how to teach the game. So I went back and had to learn how to teach it again. And then actually teaching it was a nightmare.
and I think we could probably teach it now that more of us know. Like if we were to teach somebody new, we would kind of have a different way to teach, you know. But there's so much.
Yeah.
There's a lot, and that's why I think that like you and your group should cooperatively work to be good about it. And I think the Alien expansion, I bet I will like that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize it turned it into a co-op game.
Yeah, so it has one expansion out, and that one expansion has like modules, and one of them is cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
One or two of them are cooperative. It also has a story that you can kind of play through. So
Mhm.
almost like what am I looking for? Story campaign game. Yeah. But you don't have to play it in order. You can kind of pick and choose through it. So it does some extra things. It adds aliens into it too. That's kind of cool. But yeah, the cooperative I love. I think this game would be fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that expansion once I'm able to pick it up.
All right, so we are in 40 minutes of this video, so we're going to move on to weight rating.
Yes. So, I don't know if I 100% agree with what BGG currently has, and I'll let you weigh in a second.
Yeah.
But BGG currently, as of now, is saying that this is a 4.67.
Yeah, and BGG, I feel like last week or last 2 weeks was 4.85. So I think some people went in there and went, it's a 4, it's a 3, it's a 2. No.
So how to actually play the game, like in terms of what the actions are, super simple. The abstract and tightness of the what's the word I'm looking for? Strategy, I guess, and how to play the game to actually play this game well, I think is much higher than a 4.67. I feel like it's somewhere, I mean, I was going to say 4.75 is what I was thinking, maybe 4. Honestly, maybe 4.8.
Yeah, I think this is harder than Lisboa.
I do. I agree. Yeah. This is harder. And actually, BGG is saying that as well. So I looked up a handful of the ones that we have played. Lisboa is 4.58, Kanban 4.32, the Gallerist 4.25. I think this is not just 0.58 to 0.67 more difficult than Lisboa. I think this is definitely a lot harder than Lisboa.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a 4.8.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with
4.8.
Yeah,
like, you know, I think coin games are like the 5, right? You know, so this I think hands down is the heaviest game I've played.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, you've played Feudum, which sounds like it's
complex,
but I don't know if it's fiddly or just complex or if it's hard.
It's more fiddly than anything.
Yeah. And then you played the dragon game, the train game, but like I don't know.
Lower complexity.
So I don't know.
Yeah, this might be the heaviest game that I've played. It very well might be.
And then I think Innovation we're gonna play, which may be like the same weight as this or higher.
Yeah. Weather Machine is rated lower than this is. There's some other ones, but I do think this is probably one of the heaviest. And the part of the heaviness, why I'm thinking it's higher as well, also comes in how difficult this game is to teach.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to sit down in 15 minutes, have this game taught for somebody to be able to be like, oh yeah, I'm good to go. Let's play. Like, that's not going to happen.
However, for me, I could play this game again and be able to play it versus Lisboa, where I almost have to relearn it. So I think that's different for Toph, and it's definitely different for Derek, our other friend who likes some Lisboa games. Like, Lisboa clicks for them. Lisboa does not click for me. Like, this clicks for me. You know, Kanban clicks for me. So you have those games of his where I'm sure his theme and he's good at even though I kind of bashed on the theme, his theme and the mechanics work if you can see it. When you can't see it, then you're not grasping or maybe you didn't understand the history of it or the mechanisms of it.
Yeah,
it's quite possible. So.
We need to go back to Lisboa and play it open like we did this one, because I get it. Like,
and I understand certain parts of it. It's not like I don't understand it, but to like make it flow,
to feel like you're competitive with others, to feel like you're playing on par with others. That's very difficult. So 4.75, 4.8 is what I think it should be. And you say 4.8, so
Yeah.
we're on par with that.
Mhm.
What about value?
So value rating. So I don't know what you paid for this, but it looks like you can pick this up for about $112.
112?
Mm-hmm. But did you get the deluxe?
Yeah, I got the deluxe.
Okay, so that's
was
probably not the deluxe.
Okay.
You paid,
It was
what,
150. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or,
so-
well, I got it on sale, so I think I got it for like 140.
Yeah, so you can get this game. I don't know what the difference is between deluxe and not deluxe. I find that the deluxe package gives you like some little bag that is not worth the extra $25. But, just take that into a grain of salt.
Yeah.
So if you want it for $112, I think because it's so heavy, right? I'm going to say this out of 5. If this were $50, it'd be a 5. If this were $150, it's getting tough. But at $112, I think this is like a 3.5 out of 5 for just general population that like Euros. Now, for the Lacerda people, like to me, this is a 5 out of 5. If you're a Lacerda junkie, you already have this game. I'm not talking to you anyway. But like for your general, I like Euro games. I like heavy 4 and above Euro games. I can actually get them tabled Euro game people. I would still say this is like a 3.5 for the price. I mean, like I like Eagle Griffin games. I would still say your first Lacerda, in my opinion, should be something more like Kanban EV, but I'm by.
Or the Gallerist, yeah.
Or the Gallerist,
yeah.
right? And it gets you like, oh, I kind of start to understand this, and then do you, does it open up the door or shut it for you?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like Splatter games. Does this game open the door up and you love Splatter games or not? You're going to be on one side of the fence or the other.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm at with the value rating.
And I agree with that. Now, let me ask you this question. We didn't fully discuss this, but and then I'll give my thoughts on value. Who is this game for? You hinted towards this, but who is On Mars for? Like who of those
one,
watching?
if you like Lacerda, you're going to like this game. I think this is one of his better games, bar none. I think I can see why. And if you're like me, is like, oh, this whole track over here, and you got to work cooperatively-ish. Don't let that keep you from getting this game. If you like Lacerdas, you will like this game. Yep. And it plays at any player count, which is, I can't say that for all of the games, all of his games. If you're a Euro gamer that likes 4 up and I will always preface this, have played at Lacerda, then I would also say this is for you. But
who is this not for?
If you don't like anything at a 4 and over, don't even bother. Yeah. Don't even consider this game in your if you dip into a 4-weight game, you're like, no. If you like Splatter games, yes. If you like, this is your audience.
Yeah, this is not a gateway game.
No, this is an end of the journey game.
This is for me. It was like an aspirational type thing. Like we love playing heavyweight games, and I was still a little nervous buying this because I knew it was heavy. So, so I think with the value, I think that's where it's spot on. Like for me, the $150, that's a lot of money. I can't put that into a lot of games, but I had thought about this, and I had wanted it for so long that it was in my mind the right type of investment because these are investment games. They're not coming to the table all the time, but I feel like already I have gotten most of my, I don't want to say most of my money out of it, but the enjoyment of playing this game has been higher than the enjoyment of playing some other games. And so if you think about it, how much does each gameplay cost? Well, I'm still sitting at a lot of money for each gameplay, but it's going to make its money for me quickly because I love this game, and it's going to come out more frequently than some of the others. So I think for me, it was well worth it to think. And
yeah, like I said, if you like Lacerda, this is probably a 5 out of 5 value because I think it's on the higher end, and it's going to segue into BGG rating.
Yes.
So BGG says this is an 8.2 out of 10, and more than 12,000 people have played it, but they have been willing to go on to BGG and rate it. So that is really, really good. Now, my rating of this, and Toph thought I wouldn't like this game. It's a 9 out of 10.
That makes me happy to hear.
This is not my favorite. I think it could be my favorite, but Kanban is still easier to table than this. But this is probably my second favorite.
Yeah.
I think this is a good game. I
Wow.
But I think if you could easily ruin somebody's experience with this game if you don't openly play. Like, I'm still going to caveat that. I am so in love with learning a game that way. I don't want to learn a new game in a bubble to see how bad I can do and just make me feel stupid. It really helps to be like, hey, there's all this stuff going on. What do you want to do? And that's how I like to teach games, but I've never really had anybody teach it back to me like that. And it really increased my experience tenfold.
Yeah. Yeah. So worth it. Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. So I texted Brad. I think I had just played my first solo game. I texted Brad and I was like, I'm really scared. This might be my favorite Lacerda. If you don't know, I love Lisboa a lot.
Did it make your number one, or is it still number two?
So
this last year, I forget.
So
Terraforming Mars or Lisboa is 1 and 2, but I forgot.
Yeah, so I ended up a year ago. I had Brass Birmingham, Lisboa, and then Terraforming Mars is my number one game. This last time when we did it, the order changed. Terraforming Mars dropped to 3.
That's right.
And Lisboa was number 2, and Brass Birmingham was number 1. So Lisboa is up there. It hasn't made my number 1 yet, but it's close to it. I don't know if this
is going to beat it or not.
Is going to beat it. I think it is. I think this is going to beat Lisboa. I love Lisboa, don't get me wrong, but I feel like this is, especially because Brad likes it, that plays into my ratings. Like, if you don't like the game at all, it's probably not, because you and I are the majority times that's who's playing. I'm going to rate a little bit lower. But I know for a fact my BGG rating on this one, and you can go on and double check me if you want to, it's a 10. Love it. Absolutely love this game. And, Lisboa is also a 10, but I think this might be my favorite of Lacerdas.
Yep.
It might be.
So what do you think? Have you played this? Do you like Lacerdas? Have you not played this because it scares the crap out of you, even though you've played other Lacerdas? Like, I guess we're kind of here to like pull that veil back and give you the whys and why nots of that. What's your favorite Lacerda? What's your favorite heavyweight game? Or you let us know, like, absolutely no way I don't play Overforce. Any of that, all of that is good.
Yeah.
But we'd like to know.
I love to hear that. I love to know that. And it also helps because, like, if you have something that you enjoy that's kind of similar to this, that is a lower weight, let us know. Because it's always fun when you find a game you love and then you find a game that makes that same feeling accessible to more gamers.
Yeah. And if you're kind of wondering, is our recommendation worth it or not, check out our top 10 list. Like, I like everything from Beer and Pretzels on Besides, which is some of my favorite games, to this, right? Toph is the same way. Except he's kind of like doesn't like the conflict games, right? So check out our top 10 list, and it's not a plug to go watch that, but then you can look at what we're recommending and not, because if you line up with what we like, this might be a game for you. If you're like, I don't like any of their top 10s, this is not a game for you. You need to find, like, whether you like us or not, see the games we like. If you like the same ones, you're probably going to align with what we like.
Yeah. And with a game like this, also let us know if you say, I've never played it, I still don't know if it's for me. Give us a handful of games or play mechanics, things that you really enjoy in gaming, and we'll be happy to respond back and say, hey, this is absolutely nothing like what it is that you've been playing. Obviously, if we know your games, we haven't played them all. But, those kind of things can maybe help you if you're thinking, maybe I want to try it or maybe I want to buy it. Then, we'll be happy to give our advice on that.
Definitely. And just remember, no matter how you play, whether it's solo, with family, or friends,
enjoy whatever games you're bringing to the table.
Thank you and have a good night.
Bye.